Hey there, growth seekers. Welcome back to another inspiring episode of the Growing Forward podcast, where we talk all about personal growth, fulfillment, and unlocking your true potential. I'm your host, Jonathan.
And I'm Janelle. We're so excited to have you with us today. This podcast is all about helping you take those small but meaningful steps toward becoming the best version of yourself.
If this episode resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube.
Okay, Jonathan, let's kick things off.
Today, we're tackling the growth mindset.
Ooh, I like this art.
Looks like we've got a pretty good mix of sources this time, some articles, some blog posts, even a whole Stanford report. First things first, though, one name that I kept seeing over and over again in these sources was Carol Dweck. Is that like ringing any bells?
Oh, absolutely. Carol Dweck, she's like the pioneer of growth mindset research. Her book, Mindset, it's like the go-to book on the topic.
So what's the core idea there? What did she actually find?
So basically, she found that people tend to approach challenges and learning with one of two mindsets, fixed or growth.
Right. So with a fixed mindset, you believe that your abilities are like set in stone. You're either good at something or you're not.
So that's like the I'm just not a math person kind of thinking.
Exactly. And the problem with that is it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you can't improve, you're less likely to even try.
Yeah, totally. So then growth mindset, that's the opposite of that.
Exactly. With a growth mindset, you believe that your abilities can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence.
Okay, so it's not about where you start. It's about like the potential to grow and change.
That's it. It's about embracing the process of learning and development.
Okay, I'm with you so far, but I'm already thinking, okay, so if it's all about constantly growing and changing, doesn't that put like a ton of pressure on you? I mean, when do you get to just like be good enough?
That's a great question, and it's something to be mindful of. A growth mindset isn't about constantly striving for some unattainable ideal of perfection. It's more about approaching challenges with like a more open and adaptable perspective.
Okay, so it's not about being perfect. It's about being open to learning and growing.
Yes, exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all constantly evolving, and there's always room for improvement.
Okay, I like that.
And the cool thing is, neuroscience actually backed this up. Have you ever heard of neuroplasticity?
I think I've heard the term, but remind me what that is exactly.
Yeah, so neuroplasticity basically means that our brains are incredibly adaptable. They can physically change and form new connections as we learn and grow.
So we're not stuck with the brain we're born with.
Nope, our brains are constantly evolving and rewiring themselves based on our experiences.
Okay, that's kind of a relief to hear. It makes me think of that story about Thomas Edison and all his attempts to invent the light bulb. Like, maybe he wasn't failing all those times. Maybe he was just, like, giving his brain a workout, helping those neural pathways develop.
That's a great way to think about it. It wasn't about being right every time, but rather about seeing each attempt as a valuable piece of information that brought him closer to his goal.
Right. Each attempt was a learning opportunity, not a failure.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to get why this growth mindset thing is such a big deal. It's not just about thinking positive thoughts. It's about, like, actually changing the way our brains work.
You got it. And that's why it has such a profound impact on so many areas of life. It's not just about learning. It affects work, relationships, even our physical health.
Hold on, physical health too. I'm intrigued. How does mindset tie into that?
Well, we'll delve into that more later, but just think about the placebo effect for a second.
Okay, yeah.
Our beliefs can actually have a tangible impact on our physical well-being.
That's pretty wild when you think about it. So, like, if our minds are that powerful, where do we even begin to, like, cultivate a growth mindset? Is there a step-by-step guide for this?
It's definitely a journey, not a quick fix, but there are some practical strategies we can use. One thing that comes up repeatedly in these sources is the importance of paying attention to our self-talk. What do we say to ourselves when we get a roadblock? Are we encouraging or are we critical?
Oh, the inner critic. Yeah, I think we all know that voice a little too well.
Exactly. And a growth mindset helps us challenge those negative thoughts and reframe them in a more positive and productive way.
Okay, so instead of saying, like, I'm terrible at this, you might say, okay, this is tough, but I'm going to figure it out.
Right. It's about shifting from a fixed mindset statement to a growth mindset.
Okay, I like that. So it's also like we're training our brains to look for opportunities even in the midst of challenges.
That's a great way to put it. And that kind of thinking can be incredibly liberating. One of the sources highlighted this resilience coach, Saskia Christian.
Wait, is that the one who like went from engineering to coaching? I was just reading about her.
That's her. She's a perfect example of someone who embodies the growth mindset. She completely reinvented herself and built a successful career doing what she loves.
It's amazing. And if we think that maybe we're all capable of way more than we think we are.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of the growth mindset. It opens up a world of possibilities.
This is already giving me a lot to think about. But okay, so we touched on the basics of growth mindset, but what about the impact on different areas of life? You mentioned like work and education earlier. What's the connection there?
Yet the research on the impact of mindset is fascinating. It shows up everywhere, from how kids learn in the classroom to how companies innovate and thrive. And even, like I mentioned before, it extends to our physical well-being.
Okay, so this is getting really interesting. Let's break it down one area at a time. First up, education. What's the connection between mindset and learning?
Well, a lot of Dweck's early research focused on education. She found that students who believe that their intelligence can grow, they're more likely to embrace challenges and persevere, even when things get tough.
Oh, so they're not afraid to make mistakes.
Exactly. They see mistakes as part of the learning process, not as a sign of failure. And this has huge implications for how we teach and motivate students.
Right. So instead of labeling kids as like smart or not smart, we should be encouraging them to embrace the journey of learning and like celebrate the effort they put in.
That's a great way to put it. And that same principle applies to the workplace, too.
Okay, how so?
Companies that foster a growth mindset culture, they tend to be more innovative and successful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like if you're not afraid to experiment and make mistakes, you're more likely to come up with new ideas.
Exactly. Creates an environment where people feel safe to take risks, to learn from their mistakes, and to support each other's growth.
Okay, so this growth mindset thing sounds pretty great so far, but I gotta ask, are there ever times when it's like not helpful? Like, could it lead to people feeling like they always have to be on, constantly striving and pushing themselves? Like, where's the balance?
That's a great question, and one we should definitely explore further. It's all about finding that healthy balance. A growth mindset isn't about pushing yourself to the point of burnout. It's about cultivating a resilient and adaptable approach to life's challenges.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like too much of a good thing can sometimes be a bad thing. Okay, so I'm starting to see how all this connects, but where do we go from here? Where are some like concrete steps we can take to actually start shifting our mindset?
Well, there are a few key areas we can focus on. One is how we approach challenges and setbacks. Another is our self-talk and how we choose to interpret events. And then, of course, there's the impact of our environment and the people we surround ourselves with. One of the most powerful strategies, and this is something that comes up again and again in these sources, is the power of reframing.
Reframing, okay, break that down for me.
So it's basically about consciously choosing to see challenges and even setbacks as opportunities for growth instead of as like roadblocks or failures.
Oh, okay. So, like, instead of saying, ugh, I'm so bad at this, you might say something like, okay, this is tough, but I'm going to figure it out.
Exactly. You're literally changing the way you're talking to yourself and in turn changing the way you're thinking about the situation.
Okay, I like that. It's like turning that negative self-talk into a little pep talk, you know? But what about those times when you genuinely feel stuck? Like, you've tried reframing, but you're still just like hitting a wall. Any tips for getting unstuck with a growth mindset?
Absolutely. One source suggests creating what they call an action plan. Basically, you break down a big, overwhelming challenge into smaller and more manageable steps.
Okay.
And this not only makes the task feel less daunting, but also allows you to celebrate those small wins along the way, which can be super motivating.
Right, yeah, totally. It's like that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Exactly. Small steps lead to big progress.
Love it. Okay, so we're talking about breaking things down, making them more manageable. What else? What are some other strategies for actually cultivating a growth mindset?
Where another key strategy is to shift our focus from outcomes to effort.
Oh, interesting. So instead of getting hung up on the end result, we should be celebrating the effort we put in, regardless of the outcome.
Exactly. It's about recognizing and rewarding yourself for showing up, for trying, for putting in the work.
Oh, that's a good one. I think this could be especially helpful for people who tend to be perfectionists, myself included.
Oh, for sure. It's so easy to get caught up in that all or nothing thinking.
Totally. But if we can learn to appreciate a process, even the messy parts, it takes a lot of the pressure off.
It does. And it allows you to actually enjoy the journey of learning and development rather than constantly striving for this unattainable idea of perfection.
So true. It's about progress, not perfection.
Yes. And speaking of learning, another crucial element of a growth mindset is the willingness to seek feedback, both positive and, even negative.
Okay, this is where I think a lot of people struggle. It can be so hard to share criticism, even if it's meant to be constructive.
I agree, it's not always easy, but a growth mindset helps us to detach from that emotional charge and see feedback as valuable information that can help us improve.
Okay, so it's about separating our ego from the feedback.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that feedback isn't a personal attack. It's an opportunity to learn and grow.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I've also noticed that sometimes even positive feedback can be tricky. Like it's easy to just bask in the praise and not really dig deeper.
Oh, absolutely. And as where a growth mindset comes in handy, even with positive feedback, instead of just soaking it up, they ask yourself, what specifically did I do well and how can I build on that?
Oh, I like that. So it's like we're constantly looking for ways to learn and improve even when things are going well.
Exactly. It's about always striving to be a little bit better today than you were yesterday.
Okay, this is great. So we've got reframing, we've got focusing on effort, we've got seeking feedback. Any other ninja growth mindset techniques you want to share?
Let's see. Oh, one that really stood out to me from these sources is actually pretty simple, but super powerful. It's the language we use, like the actual words we choose.
What do you mean?
So it's about being mindful of the words we use, both in our self talk and in conversations with others. For example, instead of saying, I'm not good at this, you can try saying, I'm still learning this.
Great. So it's about framing things in a way that supports our growth mindset rather than reinforcing those limitations.
Exactly. And it's not just about our self talk, it also applies to the way we talk about other people.
Oh, okay. How so?
Instead of praising someone for being smart, it can acknowledge their effort, their strategies, their persistence.
Right. So it's not about labeling someone as innately talented. It's about recognizing the work they put in.
Exactly. And I think that's especially important for kids because we want to teach them to value the process of learning, not just the outcome. But, even with all these strategies, I think there are times when we still just feel stuck in that fixed mindset. Like we know what we should be doing, but those old patterns are hard to break. Any advice for breaking free from those old ways of thinking?
Absolutely. One thing that I find really helpful is to just remind myself of that concept of neuroplasticity. Our brains are constantly changing and adapting. We're not fixed or capable of learning and growing throughout our lives.
Right, so we're not defined by our past mistakes or our perceived limitations.
Exactly. And that's an incredibly empowering realization. It means we have the power to change and evolve.
Okay, that is powerful.
It is. And another strategy that can be helpful is to surround ourselves with people who embody a growth mindset.
Right, like finding those role models and mentors.
Yes. Remember Saskia Christian, the resilience coach we talked about earlier?
Yeah, of course. Well, she talks a lot about the importance of curating our information intake. So, being mindful of the news we consume, the social media we engage with, and even the people we spend time with.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If we're constantly surrounded by negativity and comparison, it's going to be way harder to maintain a positive, growth-oriented mindset, right?
We need to be as mindful of the information we consume as we are about the food we eat,
Exactly. It's about creating a mental environment that nourishes our growth rather than depleting us. And part of that is choosing to spend time with people who lift us up and inspire us to be our best selves.
This has given me so much to think about. I love this. It's like we have so much more control over our mindset than we realize.
We really do. And it's never too late to start making those changes.
So, we've covered a lot of ground, the definition, the benefits, all that good stuff. But I think we'd be doing our listeners a disservice if we didn't talk about the moments when we fall back into old pattern. We all know what we should be doing, but then, life happens, we get stressed, we hit a roadblock, and suddenly we're right back to those fixed mindset thoughts. So what do we do about that? How do we actually deal with those moments of self-doubt and, maybe even a little bit of that I can't do this thinking?
Well, I think the first step is just to remember that, cultivating a growth mindset, it's a journey. Not like you flip a switch and suddenly you're a growth mindset guru. There are going to be bumps in the road, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's like anything else, right? You don't just wake up one day and suddenly you're a marathon runner.
Right. It takes practice and consistency and, sometimes you stumble. But the important thing is you just keep getting back up and keep moving forward.
Love it. So how do we do that? How do we actually get back up when we're, feeling stuck in those old thought patterns?
One of the most powerful tools we have is self-awareness, like noticing when those negative thoughts start creeping in.
Ah, yeah, catching yourself in the act.
Exactly. And then once you've noticed it, you could start to gently shift your perspective.
Oh, so it's about like reframing those negative thoughts into something more positive and, growth oriented.
Exactly. Instead of saying, I'm so stupid or I'll never be able to do this, you can try saying things like, okay, this is challenging, but I'm going to keep trying, or,
Yeah.
I'm still learning, and that's okay.
Okay, I like that. It's like giving yourself permission to be imperfect, to make mistakes, and to learn from those experiences.
Exactly. Because we all make mistakes.
But what about those times when it's not just a small mistake? Like what if you're facing a major setback, like a failed project or a job rejection or something like that? How does a growth mindset help us navigate those tougher situations?
Well, a core principle of a growth mindset is that, failure isn't the opposite of success. It's actually a stepping stone to success. So when we encounter those inevitable setbacks, instead of seeing them as evidence of our limitations, we can choose to see them as opportunities for learning and growth.
Oh, that reminds me of that Thomas Edison quote. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
Yes, he was like the ultimate growth mindset poster child.
He really was. But okay, it's easy to say that like you're Thomas Edison.
Yeah,
I think for most of us, failure can feel pretty discouraging. Like, how do we actually bounce back from those bigger setbacks?
well, that's where something called grit comes in. One of these articles talked about this. Grit is basically that combination of passion and perseverance that helps us stay committed to our goals, even when the going gets tough.
Oh, okay, grit. I'd heard that term before.
It was basically that stick-to-itiveness that helps us overcome challenges and achieve success. And I think a growth mindset is a key ingredient in developing grit.
So if you believe that you can grow and improve, you're more likely to persevere even when things get tough.
Yeah, exactly. Because you know that setbacks are just temporary, and that with enough effort and persistence, you could overcome them.
It's like building up that mental resilience muscle, so we can bounce back from challenges even stronger. And speaking of resilience, I think one of the most important aspects of a growth mindset is being willing to ask for help when you need it.
Absolute. And that's not always easy.
Mm,
It could be hard to admit that we need help, but it's actually a sign of strength and self-awareness.
right. And it reminds me of something else that came up in these sources, the importance of building a support system, surrounding ourselves with people who embody a growth mindset, mentors, colleagues, friends, family members, anyone who can offer encouragement and guidance and, maybe even a little tough love when we need it.
Yeah, because we don't have to do this alone. Having that support system can make a huge difference.
It can. And, it's not just about individual growth either. One of these articles talked about creating a culture of growth within organizations and
Well,
communities.
yeah, that's a great point.
And like a growth mindset can be contagious, right? If we're surrounded by people who are constantly learning and growing, it's going to rub off on us.
Exactly. And when we create environments where people feel safe to take risks and learn from their mistakes, amazing things can happen.
I love that. It's like we're all in this together, helping each other reach our full potential.
We are. And that brings us back to that idea of the ripple effect. When we embrace a growth mindset, it not only impacts our own lives, but it also has the potential to inspire and uplift those around us.
So powerful. It's not just about personal growth, it's about contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
And that's what makes this whole concept so exciting and so important.
Oh, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired, ready to go out there and like embrace some challenges.
And I hope our listeners are feeling the same way.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. Thank you so much for, sharing your insights and expertise with us. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this exploration of the growth mindset. We hope you found it as insightful and, maybe even as life-changing as we did. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing in yourselves.